Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Friday live show. Hopefully our audio is working well today, so let me know in the comment section because we're trying out a new mic right now. Let's just dive right into the giveaways because that's what we're all here for. Hopefully I have managed to do this right. We had about 400 entrants, so the hat is very full today. So we'll just go ahead and run through these all really quick. And then we are going to get you out all of the items that you have won here. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The Hyundai Santa Cruz mug goes to, I am going to be butchering names here. So Naranjan in Columbus, Ohio. So good on that one. Then let's pull out another one here. Our second item is the Ford mug. We'll just go in order. That goes to Roger in New Jersey. There will be emails going out to you, and hopefully I have all of my notes straight on who's getting what. So let's go into one question here first. Eric, so this is a really excellent question, and one that I have been wondering about for quite some time. Why don't we have higher output versions of hybrid synergy drive? The reason I was always given is because of the design of hybrid synergy drive. And interestingly, this is also the same hybrid design that General Motors, Chrysler, and Ford use for their hybrid systems. So keep that in mind. The design of this system, about 20% of the engine power and torque has to go through the dual motors inside the planetary power split transmission in order to move the vehicle forward. And I was always told that that was an awful lot of loss, and the more powerful the engine, etc., the worse this would get. You'd have heating issues, that kind of stuff. But we now have a Lincoln Nautilus with 310 horsepower and this exact same system. So why Toyota chose not to just scale things up, for instance, for the RX 500h, I don't know if we will ever know the answer to that question. Instead, they went in a different direction and they used a 6-speed automatic. So the design of the Hybrid Max system is very, very similar to what we find in the Hyundai and Kia hybrid systems, but without the mechanical all-wheel drive system behind it. And oddly enough, some questionable fuel economy numbers. That Hybrid Max system is just not quite as useful or as fuel efficient, I would say. So someone's saying the mic issue here. So we can go ahead and take change the mic here just in case this gets any better. So let us know if this is any better on the mic front. So moving along, let's go ahead and pull some more names out of the hat. So we're going to go ahead and go for the 2 national park passes. The first one here is Eric from San Jose. That's going to be a nice, easy one to send off there. And the second annual pass going along here, that is going to be mailed to Yuhao in Berkeley. So 2 Bay Area people for the national parks. So have fun with that one. Now let's move on to this one, which is a Nintendo Game & Watch. I had no idea what this was when I was given this thing, and so I had to look it up. So hopefully you know what to do with this. This is going to Nils in Longmont, Colorado. And then one more before we move back to questions here. The hat is very full today. This one is going to Matthew in Tarzana, California, and you are getting a insulated Lexus bottle. So congratulations on that. Let's move back to the next question here. Do you think for the NE Miata, they will go full EV with a manual or perhaps a PHEV option? I'm going to go ahead and guess that the Miata is not going to gain a hybrid or a full EV anytime soon. Mazda said some conflicting statements about this, but I suspect that this next generation is going to be just a variation of what we've seen. Even if they call it a next generation, most likely because of sales, the cost of compliance everywhere in the world, I'm betting it's probably just going to be a heavy refresh of what we see currently. So we'll see how that plays out, of course. Let's go ahead and pull back up one of the earlier questions here, because this is an easy one. The Mazda CX-70, you and me both. I am definitely waiting for this as well. Mazda hasn't said exactly when it's coming, but it should be soon, because it's essentially going to be a 2-row CX-90. So it won't be too long before that's there. Let's go ahead and roll through the hat again and pull up the next option. This is for the Ray-Ban sunglasses. Those are kind of interesting, very 1980s somehow to me, with the tint fade. So they're less faded at the bottom. That's going to Kavami in Westchester, Ohio. And then we have the Acura. I'm not sure which Acura that is, actually. One of those little, oh, that's an MDX Type S model. There we go. So Felix, who knew we were giving away cars today? Felix in Nevada, in Henderson, Nevada, is getting an MDX. Look at that. I feel like Oprah today. You get a car. You get a car. Now let's move on to the Mirai. Let's give away more cars. So someone's getting a little baby Mirai. And that is going to be Jonathan in San Pedro, California. And then, if you didn't notice here, Acura has been giving us a lot of models. Whoops. Let's go to the next. There we go. This is a TLX Type S. And this one is going to Kevin in Kirkland, Washington. If someone was asking, do you have to be present to win? No, because I would not have any idea who was present and who was not. So let's move along here to the next question. Do we think the Elantra N will have more features like ventilated seats and smart cruise control? I would not be surprised if it did somewhere in the world. Whether or not we get that in the United States, that's sort of a different question, I guess. Sales of Hyundai's N-Line and N products hasn't been swift necessarily in the US. They're very dedicated to it. But I think because of the relatively lower sales than maybe they had expected, they're keeping some of those options for other markets. You'll notice that even in the, for instance, the N-Line Sonata, which is not a full-on N, even in that model, it doesn't actually have all of the features that you can get in that vehicle in the Korean market, for instance. So let's dive back through. Whoops, I'm spilling names out here. So let's dive back through the hat here and see what the next person is going to get. This is another sunglass. These are Oakley sunglasses. And this is going to Linda in Franklin Township, New Jersey. Go ahead and pop that on there. And then we have a UV sterilization box for your smartphone. That is going to Sam in Fitchburg, Massachusetts. And we'll move on to the next one here. The next someone's getting a pen from Toyota. This is a pretty basic ballpoint pen there. And that is going to John in Mount Vernon, Ohio. So thanks for watching and reaching out there. And let's go back to the questions here. On the same vein here, why does Hybrid Max use a clutch instead of a torque converter? This is all about fuel economy. So a torque converter, depending on the design of the drivetrain, can account for up to 10% drivetrain loss. Modern torque converters, it's generally far less than that, but that's the number you hear tossed out most frequently. Even when a torque converter is locked, because it's basically pumping fluid around, it's basically a fluid pump, you still will find more loss to heat and friction than you would if you simply did not have a torque converter. So in the hybrid max system, by deleting that and retaining the rest of the automatic transmission, you have a slight bump in fuel economy, which is exactly why in a lot of hybrid systems with traditional automatics, we find a torque converter delete as well. The sort of justification on the other side of this, and the reason that it works, and it works better than, say, a Mercedes MCT transmission, which is just an automatic without the torque converter as well. The reason it works better in a hybrid is because the motor is usually connected to the transmission. So the motor can drive the vehicle along without engaging or disengaging the clutch. And so that allows the vehicle to start moving and get up to a speed where that clutch could engage and engage more smoothly and then drive the vehicle forward. So that's exactly what we find, for instance, in the new Mazda CX-70. Likely all the upcoming rear-wheel drive Mazdas will use that same automatic transmission with the single clutch pack in there. Is there ever going to be a redesign of the 4Runner? It definitely looks like it. It looks like it's going to be after the Toyota Tundra. So we're seeing Tundra teasers all over the place. We know the new Tundra is coming. We probably will see the 4Runner, I would guess, maybe about 6 to 9 months after we actually see the new Tundra. The next products in the lineup that they're going to be refreshing or releasing as a new design of is going to be Lexus. And we already know that there are going to be some Lexus debuts in June, most likely the Lexus version of the Grand Highlander. So let's move along here. Any idea if the Level 3 Highway Drive Pilot is designed in-house or do they partner with another company? It appears that the software was in-house designed. So it looks like sensors and electronics were co-developed with other companies, most likely Mobis, because that's where Hyundai does an awful lot of their partnering with, because they're sort of in the family, I guess you could say, since they're Hyundai Mobis. And it's not the same Hyundai as Hyundai Automotive, but it's all in the family. Sensors, we don't know exactly where all of them are coming from, but generally they have a slightly different supplier network than other mainstream manufacturers there. And Tony, yes, I did mean Tacoma if I didn't say Tacoma earlier, so sorry, not the Tundra there, but yes, Tacoma. Moving along here, do you think you'll ever replace your Outlander with the EV9 for a new long-term tester? I don't know what's next after the Outlander. I'm willing to take suggestions, so we'll probably be soliciting those in about 5 months. I would say when it's time for the Outlander to go. I think an EV9 would be a good fit, but I would love to really try something from Honda or from General Motors, since we haven't had a Honda or a GM vehicle in a while. So off the top of my head, I'm not sure what from those manufacturers would be interesting to test. They don't really have anything that's too new at the moment. On the GM side, we do have the Equinox EV coming up soon, which I'm very interested in, but will it be available in time, etc.? We don't know yet, but I wouldn't mind a base version of that one. Now let's go back to the hat here and start a few more drawings. Let's get this Bronco. This is a scarf. So it's a Bronco scarf going to Mateo in Dayton, Ohio. That's a good location for a scarf. I think we have some winter wear starting up here in this giveaway here at some point. But next we have these Nissan insulated thermoses. There are 2 of them, so they're going to 2 different people. First one is going to Kichi in Woodland Hills, California. And then the next one is Nicholas Bowers in Columbus, Indiana. You are getting the other one of those. And then we have another insulated flask. Let's go ahead and do that. A Mazda MX-30 insulated flask. That's going to Edward in Sacramento, California. California is representing very well today. And then next we have the Hummer Yeti. Keep your Hummer coffee cold. And this is going to Platzo in El Granada, California. So send that off to you starting next week. Moving along here. What do we think of the no window on the Polestar 4? I am really confused about that. I suspect, and it looks like the design of this, that they have designed it to accommodate a rear window if that's required in some markets. There has been a lot of assumption that a rear window is required in the US, but that's not actually true because think of panel vans. They don't have rear windows. I think it's kind of a weird design choice. I would suspect that they will stick glass on it for the United States. You'll notice that with the Polestar release, they have not mentioned the United States market at all, other than some prospective pricing for the US. So we assume that this is what we're going to get. We assume that we'll get EPA range figures at some point in time, but we don't have a lot of information on that, a lot of great visibility. This model appears to be probably very focused on the China market, I would assume, because it is, really a sedan essentially, even though they're calling it a coupe crossover. It's basically the same size and height, et cetera, as a BMW 5 Series. So I'm going to go ahead and guess that it's going to be more China focused. And if we see it in the US, it might get some changes. Jose is asking us how they get the name in the next giveaway. You will watch a live show and we will tell you how to do that. You will email your name, address, and phone number. It has to be a US mailing address to the email address hey@alexonautos.com. And that is how you do it. So you'll see hey@autobuyersguide.com. That's how that goes there. And then you will be entered into the new drawing. I've just pulled out the next person here, Jim in Columbia, Maryland. You are getting this ZR2 insulated flask. As I said, lots of insulated flasks here. Moving along, we have a UVC self-sterilizing insulated bottle, self-cleaning insulated bottle. And that is going to Mike in Grantham, New Hampshire. Put that down there. I just realized here we go, I have tape. The next giveaway is a BZ4X insulated bottle, or Busy Forks, as I like to call it. And that is going to Connor in Bentonville, Arkansas. Then we have a Brembo paperweight. This is kind of cool. It looks like a Brembo caliper. It's on kind of a plastic backing there, and it comes in its own little nifty wooden Brembo box. Moving along, that is going to go to Nick in San Anselmo, California. And then we have yet another insulated flask. This one is going to... Let's see here. Joseph in West Chapel, Florida. That's a good place for a water bottle to go. So let's get back to the questions here. Do we agree that the Rogue has a better interior than the QX50? I don't know about that. I think I like the styling, personal preference of the Rogue a bit more than the QX50, but I wouldn't say it has a better interior than the QX50. The QX50 has more hand-stitched components, greater precision on some of those components as well. Definitely better materials quality in that model. But I do like the more linear theme of the Rogue, and its infotainment system makes more sense to me. The two-screen thing that we have in the Infinities, I just think is a little bit odd and a little bit awkward to try and use. Let's move on, because Chris has a very good one about range here. WLTP range. Most journals report these results are less accurate. Why do we listen to Winwell? Generally because that's what the manufacturer will push out first, especially if the vehicle is designed first for a European or a Chinese market vehicle. WLTP seems to be the one that we will get in either of those markets, even though it is a European range specification test. The European range specification, much like the European fuel economy tests, this is very important, are very, very optimistic. So when you take a look at fuel economy numbers for a car in Europe and you say, well, why couldn't we have a 60 mile per gallon car in America? Well, there are a few reasons. The first one is the British gallon is 20% larger than the American gallon, so there's a 20% loss right there. And the next thing is the fuel efficiency cycle is incredibly optimistic. And that results in just very unrealistic numbers. Unfortunately, those are the only numbers we get. And so, but there's no direct way to translate because the test cycle is quite different than the North American test cycle, and different kinds of vehicles will perform differently on these tests. But generally speaking, you should take at least 20% off of a WLTP rating, sometimes 30. So in that 20 to 30% range off of an EV, just take that right off the top. That's probably the window that the EPA range is going to be in. And that's going to be important for some of the BMW, Mercedes, Polestar, Volvo, et cetera, EVs that we're going to be coming soon. Also, if you want to read the tea leaves with some of the Stellantis EVs, they're probably going to launch first as Renaults, and we're going to get similar drivetrains, not the same car, but similar drivetrains and battery packs may end up coming to the United States. So that's how you should really take a look at those numbers. Getting back to the giveaways, we have a burnout coffee mug. It supposedly gets your stuff warm and keeps it warm. Uh-oh, someone just rolled under the table. Sorry about that. Moving along, this one is going to Kevin in Garden Grove, California. Then we have a blue Hydrofat flask. This one is going to Michelle in Pearland, Texas. And then we have, hopefully some people in colder climates are going to get these because we have some winter wear coming up here. We have a Chrysler beanie. This is going to go to Nathaniel in Flowood, Mississippi. So not the coldest of places, but hopefully you will go somewhere cold. And then we have an Infinity beanie. That is going to go to Nelly in Las Vegas, Nevada. It does get cold there, so that could be handy. Whoops. Sticking things wrong here. Next up, we have Bose noise-canceling headphones. These are a nice one. Let's see who is the lucky recipient of the noise-canceling headphones. These are going to D in Alta Loma, California. So congratulations on that. And we then have third generation Bang & Olufsen wireless Bluetooth earbuds. Those are kind of nice. Those are going to Mark in Greensburg, Pennsylvania. So congratulations on that one. Let's go back to the questions here. Will the Ram Rev actually get 500 miles? I think that it will. The bigger question is going to be what is the, what's the cost of that, both in terms of actual MSRP for the vehicle, efficiency, all of that kind of stuff. The Ram Rev has an absolutely massive battery. So when we take a look at the efficiency numbers of the F-150 Lightning, I wouldn't be surprised if the Ram Rev was more aerodynamic than the F-150 Lightning. But even if we just assume that that's going to be the number, and we translate that right over to the bigger battery pack in the Ram, we end up actually over 500 miles. So that extra weight's probably going to drop the efficiency numbers down a little bit to get you right to 500 miles of EPA range. But there are a few considerations. The first one is, remember that with EVs, highway mileage tends to be lower than city mileage. So may get 500 miles on the city cycle for the EPA, but if you're going 65 or 70 miles an hour out on the open highway, how far will you go? My bet is it's probably going to be more like 450 miles. Toss a trailer on it, it's going to be lower, et cetera, which is why we have that absolutely massive battery. I do think that the range numbers seem rational, but the MSRP numbers are likely going to be very, very high because that is a fantastically big battery. Even the base battery is very, very large. So, certainly lots of resources, et cetera, being consumed there. I have to say, if I were thinking of a Ram Rev, I would probably want the plug-in hybrid model that we are going to get at some point soon, because having more realistic, maybe 100 miles of range, maybe even 50 miles of EV range, plus a gasoline engine where you could drive as many miles as you want, for me, that would make an awful lot more sense. Exactly what that looks like, we don't know, but we should know more probably in the next year or so. I am surprised that Ram released so many details so far in advance of the production of that Ram 1500. So hopefully we'll know more there. On the how do you register to win, the next time we do a live show, we'll talk more about this, but basically you just drop us an email. If you watch the last live show, there are instructions on that for how to get in on the next live show. Let's get back to the giveaways though. So we have a JBL headset. There we go. And this is another Bluetooth headset. These are going to go to Robert in Chicago, Illinois. Then we have a ZR2 insulated cooler bag. This can fit sort of, maybe a few 6-packs of something in there. And this is going to go to, I am butchering names here again. Sorry about that. Shashi in Bentonville, Arkansas. And then we get a Raptor beanie. Back into the beanie land here for a bit. This is going to go to O'Shane in Royal Palm Beach, Florida. Hopefully you go somewhere chilly because it's probably not that cold there. We then have a Honda beanie, and that is going to go to Dave in Cannonsburg, Pennsylvania. So that sounds useful. Next up, we have an Alex on Autos beanie, just in case you were wondering if we ever give away merch. It is happening today, and that is going to someone in North Dakota here, Justin in North Dakota. And then we have the beginning of way too many baseball caps here. Sensify baseball cap. That is going to Ayula in McKinney, Texas. We have won a baseball cap. Now let's move back to the questions here. So you're not sure you saw the question on Facebook. Any day when 2024 Kona will be in the showrooms. Yes, it will be in the showrooms quite soon. My recollection is a little bit faulty on this, but I believe that it will be May or June. I think late May, early June is what I was told. I asked this question, I got an answer, and I promptly forgot it. But it should be relatively soon, and we should be driving the new Kona sometime in June. So it may actually go on sale slightly before we are able to drive it and review it. So let's all move on here. We have, do we think the 229 kilowatt hour battery in the Ram going further than the Ultium EVs with the Aero Touches and more unibody design? There are a number of reasons for this. The first one, obviously, is frontal profile. The only Ultium truck that we have with the big battery at the moment that is in production is the Hummer. And the Hummer hasn't been EPA rated, so we don't actually know what its EPA rating would be if it got one, because it's a medium-duty truck and it just doesn't have that requirement. It is worth noting that the Ram 1500 Rev with the big battery pack will also be a medium-duty truck. And here, when I'm talking medium-duty, I mean Class 3 truck. So that is the big box truck kind of category. Those do not have to get EPA tested because their curb weight and their GVWR are so high that they're just outside of the testing requirement. I'm going to be interested to see what kind of range we will see in the Silverado EV. It is worth noting that the Ultium trucks are very, very heavy, which surprised me because the Ultium trucks are unibody trucks. Generally, we've been told that unibody vehicles are so much more weight efficient and space efficient, etc. But in this context with EVs, it turns out that body on frame trucks actually end up being lighter and more fuel efficient. It's the same sort of thing when we look at Hummer versus F-150 Lightning. So curb weight is likely going to be lower in the Ram 1500 Rev, all versions versus the corresponding Hummer out there. And that narrower profile, it's not as wide, it's not as high off the ground, etc., more aero focused. That's also going to lead to that better fuel economy and that better range there. So let's move along here and see what other questions we can get here. One back here. What is the easy way to know the tow rating of a vehicle? As easy as looking as the payload sticker. This is not an easy question to answer. If you're looking at a regular crossover or SUV, there isn't a lookup for your specific tow rating. You have to look at the manufacturer tow rating on their spec sheet. That's generally going to be fairly correct for most SUVs, most crossovers, because the curb weight doesn't change around too much. Keep in mind, as you noted, though, that some vehicles, like the Honda Pilot in the previous version, required a aftermarket transmission cooler, or I should say dealer-installed transmission cooler, in order to get that tow rating. And that is something that is theoretically better in the new Pilot, but there's still going to be limitations. Now, when it comes to pickup trucks, then things are definitely different. So with pickup trucks, because there are so many different ways you can configure the truck, so many different axles, you can get different axle ratios, different tires and wheel packages, etc., all of that. There you need to look at your specific configuration of vehicle. It's easiest in the Ram truck lineup because there is a VIN lookup tool on the Ram website. So you can just type in your VIN and get your actual payload and towing numbers. Everybody else really makes you wander through the charts and then take a look at your payload. And then you have to make sure that you stay in your payload window. Remember that when you look at the door sticker on your truck, that payload number is going to be different, generally speaking, than the payload on the spec sheet you're looking at because of the options and trim level changes. So if you're looking, for instance, at a Ram 1500, an F-150, or a Silverado, that max payload figure is in the absolute base trim. And when you work your way up to the very top end trim, payload will definitely go down because of the extra weight of those options there. So let's move on to a whole boatload of hats here. I'm just gonna have to try and go through them quickly here. We have a Mustang Mach-E hat. This is going to Anthony in San Diego, California. And then we have a Honda hat. I'm told this is a classic Honda hat look. That is going to Graham in Northridge, California. Then we have a Hummer hat. That's going to Dave in Lakeway, Texas. Then we have a Jeep Wrangler hat. This is more specifically, I guess you could say, a Wrangler 4xe hat. That's going to Michael in West Lynn, Oregon. So pardon me as I'm taping names onto things here so that we can actually get these to the right person here. Moving along here. Best three-row SUV in the non-luxury category, not the CX-90 or Telluride or Palisade. That's interesting that you have the three best vehicles in the segment kind of walled off there. I would probably go for Highlander Hybrid. Highlander Hybrid is fantastic as far as the fuel economy goes. Also excellent from a reliability standpoint. Roominess is not exactly its strong suit. If you want that, you should get the Grand Highlander that's coming up soon. The hybrid version of that is likely going to be similarly efficient. It's probably just going to have a very slight bump for the efficiency loss because of the slightly bigger design. But that's probably where I would stick. Let's see. What are my thoughts on the hydrogen fuel cells in the future? I actually quite like hydrogen fuel cells. I've owned a fuel cell before, or I should say leased one. I think they definitely have a place, especially in larger vehicles. If we take a look at, for instance, the upcoming Ram Rev with 500 miles of range, giving that 500 miles of range with hydrogen would probably save that vehicle some 2,000 to 3,000 pounds in curb weight. It would make that vehicle safer. It would make that vehicle more efficient. It would make that vehicle able to have longer range and considerably faster charging. Even with tanks that large, maybe it would take 6-7 minutes instead of 3 to 4 minutes to completely fuel it, like it does a smaller hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. And you would still need a bigger battery pack in there, like a plug-in hybrid size battery pack for towing and higher demand. But you were still talking about a considerably lighter vehicle than we find in a full-size battery electric truck. I think that batteries work very well for vehicles that are sleeker, smaller, etc. But the larger the vehicle, the trickier that gets from that curb weight standpoint. But we don't know what the future holds, and we don't know how much money is really going into fuel cell investment. We should see a production Honda fuel cell crossover, which makes a lot of sense. Basically, a hydrogen plug-in CRV very, very soon. That's going to be built in the United States. Exactly what we see after that, I'm not sure. But for me, at least, that makes way more sense than the last generation Clarity. Also, way more sense than the current generation Toyota Mirai, which is very pretty, but was a fantastic landing at absolutely the wrong airport. Let me unplug that little guy there so it doesn't dingle at us here. Okay, moving along, let's get back to the hat giveaway because we have a lot. We have a Wagoneer hat. That is going to David in Queensbury, New York. We have a GR hat. This is going to Eldar in Wildwood, Missouri. Hopefully I'm remembering my state abbreviations properly here. We then have a Toyota GR Racing hat. That is going to Willie's in Las Vegas, Nevada. A Honda Civic Type R hat. That is going to William Morris in Coon Rapids, Minnesota. We then have a GR Super hat. We have lots of hats. That is going to Gary in Corona, California. We then have, I'm not entirely clear why we have a zippered bag with a Pacifica logo on it, but hey, we have one. It is made from the same leather as the top end trim in the Pacifica. That is going to James in West Covina, California. Hopefully you will find some sort of use for that. We then have a item that is out of order on, oh no, there it is. That is a Hydro Flask with no branding on it at all. That is going to Ahmed in Santa Clarita, California. And an Acura hat, one of two Acura hats. That is going to David in New Rochelle, New York. Let's get back to the questions here. Or comments here. Soon, I think the Explorer will get refreshed in China. Hopefully, they bring the PHEV Explorer. I agree that the Explorer refresh has to be out there very soon because, again, yeah, we have seen it in China. I am not clear whether they're going to bring the plug-in hybrid to the United States. Ford has remained somewhat dedicated to the Corsair plug-in hybrid. It got the refresh, and the Aviator plug-in hybrid is still there. It hasn't been refreshed just yet, but we know it's probably going to happen soon. Whether or not Ford is going to really bring more, I'm not sure. Some manufacturers have fallen off the plug-in hybrid bandwagon, and some are steadfast there. So Toyota seems to be giving us more prime models. The Korean brands definitely still seem to be dedicated to it, but not on the luxury side. So looks like we're never going to see a Genesis plug-in hybrid, for instance. Exactly how that works, I don't know, though. Let's move on here and get back to the giveaways. Oops, if I can. There we go. We have, oh, actually, I do need to stay there because of the other Acura hat is going to Zayao in Austin, Texas. And then the Demon hat or Red Eye hat is going to Giovanni in Maywood, California. We then have a teeny tiny backpack. It's difficult to tell in the photo, but this is fairly small. It's a single shoulder strap thing. And this is going to David in Bethesda, Maryland. And then we have a Toyota Corolla Cross concept bag. This is a fairly thin shopping bag kind of bag. And this is going to Lucas in Chicago, Illinois. Go back to the questions. Thanks, Drew, for the super chat here. Go ahead and answer your question. So trying to decide between an M340i and G70. Any videos coming on the M340i soon? Nothing on the 340i soon, although we recently had a video on the refresh in the 3 Series. I like both of those vehicles for entirely different reasons. I would say if I were choosing, I might lean towards the G70. On the but it would be a very tight one, let me say, like 1% over the edge for the G70. And that's, for me, mainly styling. And I found the interior slightly more comfortable. But it's really hard to go wrong with the 3 Series. The 3 Series is honestly very, very well engineered. And I'm not just talking about the way that it drives. It drives very nicely. It's definitely very, very fast. I love the inline six engine. The ZF transmission is fantastic. It's roomy. The refreshed infotainment system has offended some folks, but I actually like iDrive 8. The big things to keep in mind would be the 3 Series is going to be more expensive, comparably equipped than the Genesis. So that's, a big thing there. On the other hand, it's probably going to lease less expensive than the Genesis because lease rates are very good over on the BMW side. So that's kind of a give and take thing there. Reliability, generally going to be better on the Genesis. That's both short-term and long-term reliability. So if we take a look at everything from minor issues within the warranty period to major issues outside of the warranty period, those are generally speaking going to be less frequent in the Genesis, and when they do happen, less expensive to deal with in the Genesis than in the BMW. Handling, I think that comparably equipped, they are very similar, but the comparably equipped part is important because there are so many different ways that you can configure your 3 Series. The 3 Series is the best seller in this segment outside of the Tesla Model 3. Some people don't want to put the Model 3 in this segment. It absolutely is. It's definitely here. But sales-wise, the 3 Series outsells the G70 by quite a wide margin, and that means that they can offer more configuration available there. So you're going to find more paint options, more interior options, more gadgets and gizmos, that sort of thing. With that added complexity comes a different cost structure, which is part of why they're more expensive. So I would say very tough decision. If I were shopping in this segment right now, I might lean a bit more personally towards the Volvo S60 plug-in because you get a lot of power. You still get over 27 miles per gallon, actually nearly 30 miles per gallon if you treat it nicely. Decent all-wheel drive range. It is not going to drive or handle like the Genesis or the BMW. It is definitely a funky mix of front-wheel drive and rear-wheel drive, depending on the mode that it's in. It is a little bit heavier, but I do like the style of it a little bit more. And I also love the plug-in hybrid system design and its performance and fuel economy. So that's probably where I would go there. Let's go ahead and get back to the giveaways. We have a GR t-shirt. Pulling names out of the hat here. We have Medi in Coplay, Pennsylvania. Then we have a ZR2 hat that is going to Luke in Wellsburg, Virginia. And then we have more merch here. We have an Amber Lamp Preservation Society t-shirt. That one is going, you can get that one on the merch store if you are interested. It's the AOAmerch.com. Anyway, that is going to Huron in Parsippany, New Jersey. Hopefully you are a large because these shirts are just one size only. We also have the 3-row seating chart t-shirt for showing you where the mother-in-law belongs. Sorry, mother-in-laws. That is going to RJ Talley in Arcadia Street somewhere. I'm assuming somewhere in Southern California. We'll have to reach out to them because they did not give us a city name. Alrighty, moving on. We have a Paddle Poodle t-shirt because paddles on a car with a CVT are as useful as paddles on a poodle. Moving along here, we have Brian in San Diego is getting this one. And then we have a Gazoo Racing t-shirt. That's going to Michael in Mountain View, California. That's nice and close. Cheap shipping. Anyway, moving along here. When smart car is legal in the USA, what if K cars would be legal to be registered? So there's no particular problem with a K car in the United States. There's no size requirement here in the US, et cetera, as long as they meet the minimum federal crash test, side impact, and rollover standards, which is entirely possible with a small car, they could be sold in the United States. The real answer here is that manufacturers realize nobody actually buys them. So Scion tried it with the IQ. Mercedes tried it with the Smart. It went exactly nowhere. I think the crux of the problem is that in America, we as a people, and me included if my default opinion is there, generally see small cars as cheap cars. And if the smaller it is, the cheaper the car should be. The problem is that for a wide variety of different reasons, making cars smaller does not actually cost less, and in some instances can actually cost more. If you shrink the car to Smart 4.2 sizes or Scion IQ sizes, you have to end up using an awful lot more high-strength steel in the structure of the vehicle to make sure it doesn't crumple like a little can. And that's part of why they're end up more expensive than something quite a bit larger. You'll notice that the Smart 4.2 was nowhere near the cheapest car in America. It was actually about 50% more expensive when it was sold in the US than the least expensive car here. So that's the biggest problem there. By the time you've shrunk anything smaller than even a Venue is tricky, but certainly something smaller than a Chevy Trailblazer or a Honda HR-V, anything smaller than that is definitely going to be quite a bit trickier to try and really shrink the price tag there. Jose is asking, would you recommend the Kia Stinger even though it's being discontinued? I still would, especially if you can get a good deal on it. The Stinger was fantastic. It doesn't handle as well as the G70. The rear end is a little bit lighter, and sometimes if you're pushing it really hard, the rear end can lift a little bit, which can sometimes be disconcerting, but that is a very, very minor complaint. And you really have to be driving it very hard, like out on a track, to really experience that. It is definitely well sorted. I like the all-wheel drive system in it. It just turns out that nobody actually was interested in a sedan that had more of a performance bent to it. It just never sold as well as a Kia K5, even though it was definitely a better vehicle than the K5. So let's get back to the giveaways here again. We next have some Supra socks. I have no idea why Toyota was giving us socks with Supras on them, but hey, that's how that happened. And this is going to Breck in Layton, Utah. Then we have a Honda Civic Type R shirt. This is on the back of the shirt, by the way. This is going to Eli Ramirez in Dallas, Texas. That's that one. Then we have a Audi blanket. This is quite a large blanket, by the way. So this is not quite full-size bed size, but it's definitely, snuggle on the sofa with more than one person kind of sized. And this one is going to William in Henderson, Tennessee. So definitely gets a little cool there in the winter. You'll use that one. Lighter blanket-wise, we have the Hummer EV blanket, and that is going to Ryan in Johnston, Iowa. It gets a little bit colder there, so, keep the heater turned up. Let's see here. We have then a fairly small Hyundai bag satchel thing. You could put an iPad in here. It is not the largest thing in the world. That is going to Adam in San Diego. I suppose it's sort of a Merce-sized thing. Then moving on, we have another insulated bag container here. This is going to John Wesley in Houston, Texas. Stay hydrated down there in the summer. We then have, this is actually quite nifty. This is a Subaru backpack, or Subaru gave it to us. It's not Subaru branded, but inside there are plates and glasses and things for a picnic for four. So that's kind of handy there. So it's a complete picnic with cutlery kit, glasses, saucers, and cups and things, and a little blankie there. And that is going to Dom Smith in Cincinnati, Ohio. So hopefully you love picnics there. And then we get more winter weather here. Hopefully people are going, Lincoln, California. So Philip in Lincoln, California, you are getting a medium weight Prius Prime. A little difficult to see, but it actually says Prius Prime on the shoulder there. And that is winging its way to you. One of them is medium, one of them is large. There are two of them being sent out. And unfortunately, you don't have a choice on the size. So sorry about that. The second one is going to Bruce Miller in Scottsdale, Arizona. Alrighty. Moving back to the questions here. Greg is saying, need to get on the list. Yep. So the next time we do a live show, you can enter. You will just email your entry to the live show email address that will be on the live show screen, and you get in there. So let's see here. How far off is the Camry redesign? I am really curious about that because last time we saw redesigns, Camry and Accord were very, very close. This time, I'm not clear because it seems that there isn't going to be another Toyota reveal this calendar year, at least not one that we know of yet. They've sent us a bunch of save the dates, and I don't know if that is one of them. My Ouija board reading hasn't been overly clear. If we will see the Camry this year, I suspect it would be maybe sometime around the Los Angeles Auto Show in November. Unlikely anytime before that, but it could very well end up waiting till next year. Mid-size sedan sales aren't exactly on a roll in the United States, so I'm not clear whether or not they're going to redesign or refresh or maybe just significantly tweak what we see now rather than take it quite as far as some folks might hope. Let's see here. EV optimized tires worth the extra $30 a donut? Yes, actually they are, if you are really concerned about efficiency and range. On the lifetime of the tire, you are probably going to save the $30 per tire in reduced energy consumption. The big reason the tires are more expensive is because the tires contain extra silica. So you can think of this as basically grippy sand. And it performs the same function as you know, the grit that you find in sandpaper, essentially. So by adding silica to tires, and this seems counterintuitive, actually, strangely enough, I should say too. What's semi-counterintuitive about silica in tire compounds is they have a simultaneous effect of improving durability of the tire, improving the wear characteristics with it, improving the grip level, and reducing the rolling resistance of the tire, which is kind of a weird twist there. So low rolling resistance tires don't necessarily have less grip than a standard all-season tire, based on, depending on what the content of the tire is. I should say, you know, within a similar tire family, Goodyear, Firestone, etc., they're comparable family, low rolling resistance tire to mainstream tire. Grip levels are very, very similar because of what's going on in the tire. So there's extra cost because of the extra material. And then other random sideways engineering fact, costs tend to be slightly higher because the machines that make the tires don't last as long. You're essentially sandblasting the inside of all of that processing equipment because the silica's in there, the grit is in there. And so all of that equipment just doesn't last as long as a result of that in the mix. But it does have a positive impact on range and efficiency. Moving on here, thanks for the super chat here. Do OEMs really pay attention to every penny when designing a car using LEDs for brakes and lights? They definitely do. Interesting tale, actually. I was just sitting down at a dinner with one of the former, what was the title here? Former, basically cost-cutting engineer, for lack of a better title. Cost-cutting engineer. He used to work for Ford. And his job literally was to go through designs of vehicles and cut costs. What can we do that will reduce, and it's not bad necessarily. What can we do that will reduce warranty claims, because that's a cost? What can we do that will reduce parts cost, et cetera, make the material last longer? But they definitely have very specific windows on payback. And so this is why you'll notice in cars, little things might change from year 1 to year 2, year 2 to year 3, because every manufacturer has a department that's doing this. And they're definitely paying attention to those, because if you're making 300,000 cars a year, then that can add up, especially if there are close relatives in the lineup that use the same part. This could mean that 1 year a particular door component or a latch component is painted, and then the manufacturer says, well, you know, if we could anodize that instead of painting it, it would last longer and it would be cheaper because there's less labor involved, et cetera. Those kinds of fixes are a win-win because it could improve. Changes that are a little bit less win-win could be moving from less expensive light bulbs to cheaper light bulbs because they think that the competition isn't doing it and we don't need to do it, that kind of thing. Moving around option packages, going from 4-position lumbar support down to 2-position lumbars, 2-way lumbar support, like we've seen in some vehicles. Most notably, Hyundai and Kia have actually recently made this adjustment. They used to have 4-way lumbar in some models that dropped down to 2-way lumbar. That was to save costs and because it wasn't necessary to be competitive anymore. So other manufacturers chose not to do that. So Hyundai and Kia just followed right along and deleted that feature there. So that kind of thing definitely does happen. Moving back to the giveaways here, we have a Bridgestone beanie. That is going to Sri in Folsom, California. Then we have some actual winter weather. So let's hope and dig deep that we get some New Englandy or New York people, or I don't know, Northern people, because these next ones are actually fairly warm. And, oh, there we go. We're in luck. David in Bethesda, Maryland is getting this one, and it's an Infinity puffy jacket. And this one is a very heavy jacket. So, this is also going to somewhere cold. So Stephen in Martinsburg, West Virginia. This one has the faux fur up there on the hood. And then we have a Infinity lightweight jacket top thing here, zipper. Morrisville, North Carolina. This is going to J Ledbetter in Morrisville, North Carolina. We get a teeny tiny Civic Type R bag. That's going to Edwin in Fontana, California. Then we get a Toyota. This is actually a Toyota bag from some event they did called Headquarters Confidential. This is going to Michael in Petaluma, California. And then we have a Bridgestone blanket. This one is going to Kevin Buckley in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And then we have our very last giveaway, which is actually a quite practically sized backpack. I liked this one enough that, again, we don't keep our giveaways, but I actually bought one from North Face that is this exact bag for going on road trips and things like that, traveling, because it's just a really nice sized bag. That is going to Paul in Edison, New Jersey. And that concludes the giveaways. So the hat may now go to the side. Again, if you want to register for the giveaway, the next time we have a live show, there will be an email address. So Kyle, how do we register there? There will be an email address on the video next time we do a live show. And then you can email in your information to us there, and we will toss your name literally in the hat. Oh, many names. So we do live shows live show giveaways maybe once every 6 to 9 months. It really just depends on how much stuff has collected. My studio was getting pretty full, so we had to get rid of that. Moving along here, this is a good question. Why Toyota factory tires don't have 3-peak mountain snowflake versus tire shop same tire? It oftentimes is simply cost cutting, perfectly frankly. So when manufacturers develop a tire with the tire manufacturer, vehicle manufacturer and tire manufacturer together, it is important to remember that this is not an off-the-shelf fitment. So BMW, Toyota, Mazda, etc., they will go to Michelin or Bridgestone and say, we're developing this car. We have these requirements in mind. We kind of like that tire. We want you to tweak it. The tweaks can sometimes change cabin noise figures. Maybe they don't like the noise that the stock tire had on the road. Maybe they want a little bit extra grip. Maybe they want some extra sidewall strength. Maybe they want this. Maybe they want that. So fundamentally, the Falcon Wild Peak tire or the Grappler tire you get on the car from the factory is not the same tire that you will get from Tire Rack or anywhere else. If you want that exact fitment of tire, the only place you will get it is at your dealer. And you have to be specific and say you want that specific tire. It doesn't make as big of a difference as I think some manufacturers say, but this is one of those sideways weird twists where you lose the 3-peak mountain snowflake rating on that tire. Is the tire fundamentally that different? Maybe, maybe not. Most likely not. But it's possible that they just did not bother to test it for that standard to meet that level of winter traction. Why they do this, it honestly boggles the mind. I wish they wouldn't. And this is exactly why, for instance, on the Bronco, we have Wrangler tires on a Bronco, But Ford said, one of the things we want you to do is to remove that whole Wrangler thing because we don't want a Bronco with Wrangler on it. So that definitely is kind of funny. Let's see here. Over here, we have another question here. So looking for mid-size three-row crossovers for growing family, really annoyed at not getting bench seats and higher end trims. What gives? Supposedly, and this is, I agree with you there. Supposedly, the higher the trim level, the less likely people are to have especially younger children. So generally, it seems that household sizes fall and the number of children that are young tends to fall the higher level of trim that you get. Really, manufacturers like Honda with the Pilot, it's one of the few vehicles where we still have that bench in the middle. And I like the way that Honda chose to do this in the Pilot with the seat that's removable. So you can leave it in, you can take it out, you can do what you want. I do think that it was a bit of a missed opportunity for Honda that there is not an insertable center console or a cover or something that you can put in that spot there. Because especially if kids are getting into the third row, those latches in the floor are pretty big and they are easy to trip over it. I don't have tiny feet and I tripped over it getting from the second row into the third row in that vehicle. So I thought that was kind of a bummer. Let's move back here. What are the must-haves in the next vehicle? That's an interesting question there, Shannon. For me, I really love a ventilated seat, and that is definitely one of my must-haves. I really like definitely adjustable lumbar support, reasonably adjustable lumbar support, ventilated seats, and a decent-sized LCD infotainment screen. And the nice thing is that these are features that are no longer exclusive to top-end luxury vehicles. You can get, with the exception of the highly adjustable lumbar support, you can get a decent number of subcompact crossovers, even with ventilated seats and even heated steering wheels, etc. So those are probably my biggest things there. Let's see here. What do we think of the Ridgeline Passport? A similar redesign of the Pilot, just kill them off. That is an interesting question. I believe that we are going to get a new Passport because the Passport is effectively just a two-row Pilot. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the same cycle, maybe next year or so, we saw both a new Ridgeline and a new Passport, because it's not, I mean, obviously it's not cheap to develop a new vehicle like that, but in the grand scheme of things, developing a new two-row vehicle off of the three-row vehicle is a lot less expensive than, say, developing a Pilot and developing a Honda CR-V. That's much more expensive. So I'm pretty sure that we will end up getting a next generation of both of those vehicles. Honda's been really dedicated to the Ridgeline. It is, I think, a really great mid-sized truck, even though it doesn't sell terribly well in the United States. Passport, that segment is growing a little bit. It's hard to tell exactly where the numbers are going because it's such a quirky segment. We have, in this mid-size segment, we have vehicles like the Sorento, technically sort of in there. It's a smaller three-row vehicle. Oddly enough, so from what I have been told, Passport does get cross-shopped against three-row options like a Highlander, because Highlander has a fairly small third row as well. If you really want a constant use third row, you're generally looking at some of the bigger options in that segment. So I'm going to really be interested to see what they choose to do there. Let's see here. PK. What company refreshes their cars way too late? I would say Stellantis. I think this is a tricky one. I would say it depends on how the sales trajectory is going. I find it difficult to say that Stellantis refreshes cars too late because their customers don't seem to care. When you take a look at their products that are pretty old right now, Charger and Challenger are the best selling vehicles in their segment. Challenger by an astronomical mile, which is the shocking thing. Challenger outsells basically Camaro and Mustang combined, with this asterisk here. Remember that there is no factory convertible Challenger, and factory convertibles account for more than half of Mustang sales and about half of Camaro sales. So when you're taking a look at like product to like product, two-door performance coupe American, the Challenger outsells Mustang by an astronomical margin, and it is positively ancient. So I think at some point you get to this weird phase where all of a sudden the age of the vehicle is an asset, not a liability. And that is kind of a quirky one. We see the same thing with Tacoma and 4Runner. Their sales are fantastic and they're really old and honestly, I would say uncompetitive as well. But the customer doesn't seem to mind, and that's who's buying the car. So that's what I would say. Moving on here, Paul. Do you think Honda will come out with a hybrid Pilot or Odyssey? Hybrid Odyssey seems very unlikely. Hybrid Pilot, I have been told that is more likely, but in this generation, I doubt that it will happen anytime soon. Honda does not have a hybrid system that is well designed for a larger, heavier vehicle. We don't know whether they are working on one either. We do know that Honda is working on joint EV development with General Motors and internal EV design. We also know that Honda is a very conservative design company. So it is more likely, I would say, that they are working on full EVs and they will just go straight from gasoline vehicles without hybrids to full EVs. So I would say probably unlikely on that front. Lou was commenting on the new Nautilus. I really like the look. I know that the manufacturing location is offending some people out there, especially Lincoln traditionalists. I do think that is a very weird design choice or a very weird manufacturing choice for Ford. All Nautiluses are going to be built in China. Now, there are reasons for this. It is a rational business decision on Ford's side. The average Lincoln owner is not blue-haired and living in the Midwest. The average Lincoln owner is young, living in Beijing. And Lincoln sells better in China than the United States and has for a little bit. And the divergence is just increasing. So American sales have been kind of tootling along, maybe a gentle drop over the last few decades. In China, Lincoln sales have been on an ascendance. So with that in mind, and with the fact that it looks like, we don't have confirmation, but it looks like the Ford Edge is not going to get a second edition in the United States, then it makes sense that they build it in China. Whether or not it ever moves to the United States would probably be the result of sales and customer interest and perhaps maybe legislation. If importation of vehicles became very customer driven, that customers just absolutely would not buy it because it's built in China, then that will probably have an impact. But at this point in time, we don't really see much of a problem with Chinese built vehicles in the United States. We've seen a few from General Motors. Polestar obviously is there, and sales have been going up every year in the US. Obviously, there is a segment of America that doesn't want to buy a car built in China, but there seems to be a decent segment that is willing to do it. And of course, there are a lot of people that are buying practically everything they buy from China. If you're shopping at Walmart, if you're shopping on Amazon, you're probably buying a whole lot of Chinese everything, and it probably costs more than the car in your driveway. So that's definitely something to think about there. Moving along here. Here we go. Do we know if the GLC is coming showrooms? No, I have not heard any detail, but I would expect it's probably going to be about 6 to 9 months after you see them on showrooms in Europe. Moving along, new Tacoma. Theory on trims, it's probably going to be substantially similar to what we see in the Tundra now, with the exception of some new, more off-roady trims and the new trims circling around the new Hybrid Max system. Bugs is talking about the screen layout in the new Nautilus. Reminds me of how the Apple demoed CarPlay 2. I was really hoping that this would be one of the new CarPlay 2 cars, but that upper screen is not going to interact with CarPlay, which is kind of an interesting twist there. Moving along here, I went to look at the Ioniq 6, liked it this week. Yeah, I do like it. I think the design is a little bit controversial, that sort of whale tail thing back there. I'm interested to see what the new ID7 looks like, because I do like that design just a little bit more. Someone's asking here about the 2 Series Grand Coupe and whether it's going to be discontinued soon. I don't expect it to be discontinued worldwide. Whether or not it clings on in the United States, that is a different question. We know that Mercedes is still going to be bringing an inexpensive small vehicle to the US, the CLA. The A-Class is gone. But the CLA is going to hang out here for a while, it seems. And of course, the Audi A3 is still here. So I think it would be odd if BMW abandoned that entirely. Let's see here. Moving along, we then have, what new question do we have here? Do we think the 2024 Aviator will look like the new Nautilus? I would not be surprised if it received a tweak somewhere between worlds. The Aviator is a bit more of an American market-focused vehicle than the Nautilus. From what I understand, Aviator sells better in the US than it does in China. With the Nautilus, it was the reverse. So I believe that design was a little bit more Chinese market-focused in terms of its design priorities. But this definitely seems to be a good look, I think, for Lincoln. So I kind of hope that it does look like the Nautilus. Moving on here. Ardent lover of Mazda, watching reviews, been considering a CX-9, recently confronted the warranty on Mazda vehicles. I would say I would definitely buy a CX-90. The CX-90 is fantastic. I know you said CX-9, but if you're CX-9 considering, I would CX-90. I think the CX-90 is just a better vehicle in every way. A used CX-9. There things do get a little bit different. I still like the way that it drives, depending on the kind of deal you get on it. The CX-9 has been relatively reliable. Mazdas in generally have been relatively reliable lately. So I don't think that's a bad idea. I would say that. Moving along here, we have which OEMs have the best overall design? This is such a tricky question because design is such a personal preference. I like a lot of different manufacturers' designs. I think that Hyundai and Kia have done a really good job with their designs lately, with some exceptions. So I think that the era of restrained, universally attractive styling in the Hyundai and Kia lineups is over. Now they're trying to be more adventurous. So now I think they have designs that I'm not the biggest fan of. I don't think that the Tucson or Sportage are quite my cup of tea. Not a biggest fan of that look on the front end. Also, I think that the Sorento is a little bit funky. I think the Telluride looks excellent, etc. And maybe polarizing designs are the best thing. Because when I think of designs that are boring to me, I think of some of the new Honda designs. And when I think of designs that are ugly to my eye, I also meet people that absolutely love them. Like I know some people that absolutely love the new Toyota Crown. I'm not the biggest fan of its look, but it is certainly polarizing. It's certainly distinctive. I have to say that the BMW 7 Series is one of those. It's polarizing for sure. I happen to like it, but not everybody is a fan of the way that front end looks. I do think that BMW has a very elegant design philosophy and design language now. I think that Mercedes has gone a little bit too egg-shaped. I think they're very round. Jaguar, someone just asked about Jaguar. I used to love Jaguar's design philosophy so much, but now the modern thing, it's just not doing it for me. It's just too un-Jaguar. What about, let's see here, Stellantis, I would say they play a little bit too strongly to their base sometimes. So the Jeep look is a little bit too the same. They all look like scaled models of one another sometimes. And that works for Jeep owners, apparently. So, Wagoneer, Grand Cherokee, Compass, they all look very, very similar. A lot of family look going on there with those vehicles. Let's see, who have I not commented on? I actually think that some of Acura's designs look very attractive in a way that the Honda designs don't. So I love the Acura grille and the way that design looks there. But the long overhang is a little bit funky in that design. Genesis I find attractive, but you have to really like big grills because those grills are positively enormous. And the bigger the Genesis, the bigger the grill becomes. So let's see here. Moving on. Like the Sportage and dislike the BMW i7. That's the thing about styling. Everybody tends to have a slightly different take on that one. Will there be a new Durango based on Grand Cherokee or Wagoneer? It's difficult to tell. This is kind of the interesting thing that's going on at Stellantis right now. They kind of seem to be resorting some of the model lines. There have been some consistent rumors that the Durango would get redesigned not on Grand Cherokee, but on Wagoneer. So it would move up a size, and then we would get a different vehicle that maybe is Grand Cherokee based, but more performance oriented, more sporty, more sleek, more street oriented. And that maybe that could replace the Durango. I am not sure which to believe. The Durango has been a mid-sized three-row thing for its entire existence. I would be surprised if it moved that far in the lineup. But it maybe doesn't make sense to have the Durango around when we also have a three-row Wrangler, or sorry, a three-row Grand Cherokee. And the last time we had a three-row Grand Cherokee, it was a Commander. It somehow didn't sell well. This one is actually selling well. And that's kind of why Durango hung on, because people wanted the Durango rather than that three-row Jeep. Now it seems to be an entirely different world, and I just don't quite understand it. Let's see here. Vinay, looks great. The launch happened in Long Beach. Any updates on the Integra Type S? The only update that I have is that at the moment, I cannot get Honda or Acura to let me drive it at the launch event. I know that it's happening soon, and keep being told it's a very small event. Don't worry, we will think of you at some point. But unfortunately, they are not thinking of me at the moment. So, tweet them and tell them that I should be at the event. Let's see here. Should phone as key be a premium feature? Features I want all work in Bluetooth and require cell connectivity. I am a little unsure about the phone as key thing. As we have seen it today, it is not the most reliable thing in any vehicle that it's been in that I've tested. It worked best in the Tesla that we had, but it didn't work what I would say well. It was not as reliable as a regular car key. It also uses a lot more power. Bluetooth is a much higher power protocol than a regular key fob, which is why manufacturers have been working as far on reducing power consumption for these by using NFC rather than Bluetooth in the phone. And that's why we find a different kind of phone S key technology rolling out in some vehicles and being supported by some smartphone makers. I am really interested to test some of those, because that does have the promise of more reliable connections, a faster connection with the car, lower power consumption on the car side as well. So keep those fingers crossed on that front. Moving on here, we have one last question. We'll go for PK here on the last question of the night before you can just have fun on your Friday by yourself. And this is the Chrysler Airflow. When is that going into production? That is a really good question. It's something that I have been asking for a while, because we have seen the concept. It's obviously not going to look quite like the concept by the time we get to the production version. I would assume that we will see it next year, probably mid to late next year. It is not really soon. What is interesting at Stellantis is that they are really seriously focusing on plug-in hybrids. The Wrangler 4xe is the best-selling plug-in hybrid in America, followed by the Grand Cherokee plug-in hybrid, which is totally bonkers to me. And the sales split is even more impressive. I mean, the Wrangler is selling over 200,000 units a year. 38% of them in the first quarter of this year were plug-in hybrids. They're selling a ton of plug-in hybrids. And so I think that because we're seeing those numbers really start to ratchet up so well, I don't think that they are under a lot of pressure due to regulatory requirements and other things like that and compliance. I don't think they're under a lot of pressure to speed up the development of that full EV. So that's my assumption. I could be proved wrong here. I'm prepared to be proved wrong by Stellantis. So if you're listening, get that Chrysler Airflow into production sooner. But that's where I assume that is going. So with that out of the way, cheers, everybody. Have a happy Friday, and we'll see you next week.